Good morning, all. Uh, good, good morning. Welcome to today's class. I'm your facilitator for me, Ohana. As you can see on the slide, today we'll be discussing business law. Uh, and the topic for today is registration of business and compliance requirements. So we're going to look at registration of business. What are the compliance requirements? The What are the objectives of today's studies? One is to enable participants have a basic understanding of the nature of the legal system in Nigeria, to enable participants understand the legal regime and regulatory agencies regulating businesses in Nigeria, and for participants to know the types of business organizations and steps in the formation and registration of business in Nigeria, understand the basic nature and elements in a commercial contract. So these are the objectives of today's course. These are the things we, by the time we're done discussing today's course, these are the things I expect the participants to know. So what are the topics? What are the topics that we'll be discussing to help you have a knowledge of these objectives so that by the end of the class you can say, okay, I understand the basic nature and elements in a commercial contract. You can tell anybody you have an understanding, a basic understanding of the nature of the legal system. So the topics we are going to look at, one is the Nigerian legal system, the relevant government agencies regulating businesses in Nigeria, type of business organization and the legal implication of the various types of business organizations, registration of business organizations, then finally we'll look at law of contract. So when we talk of the Nigerian legal system, so before we talk about law, let's look at what the Nigerian legal system is. When we talk about the Nigerian legal system here, we're talking about the totality. It consists of the totalities of laws or legal rules and legal machinery which are obtained within Nigeria. Legal rules, legal machineries which are obtained within Nigeria. We're talking about Nigerian legal system basically is totality of the laws, all the laws in Nigeria. Then aside all the laws, the rules from states, from local government, states to federal level, all these laws are parts of the Nigerian legal system. Then we talk about the machineries. What are the machineries responsible for enforcing these laws? That's when we'll talk about the judiciary, the executive arm of government. Then we have the legislature. These are machineries responsible for for the enforcement of this law. Because the executive arm of government comprises of different agencies. All these regulatory agencies that regulate businesses in Nigeria, they fall under the executive arm of the government because they are there to implement policies of government. And we have the judiciary, which is there to interpret the law. And still, the executive, this police, customs, all are agencies under the executive that enforce the law. So all these are the police, the customs, the courts, the offices, the various government agencies put together form the Nigerian law. Basically, after I haven't looked at what the Nigerian legal system is, then what is law? Generally, there is no single definition of law. It means different things to different people. But for the purpose of this class and for the law profession, it's more interested in the narrow and guided meaning of law as a rule of human conduct, tacitly or formally accepted by people as binding and backed up by some mechanism for sustenance of its binding nature. It's there, it's there to rule over human conduct. That's why we have laws. human conduct tacitly or formally accepted by people as binding and backed up by some mechanism for sustenance of its binding nature. Basically, it must be accepted by people for it to be effective or for it to be enforceable within the society. A law is there to regulate the behavior of people. That is why in every society we always have laws. In our families, we have laws. We belong to different associations, we belong to churches, we belong there are always rules, and these rules are there to guide conduct, to regulate the conduct of persons. And these laws do not exist in vacuum. One, they have to be accepted by the people, because before the law is put in place, I believe there can be sometimes, if not for families, where the father and mother will just say, okay, this is the law. But in other societies, there must be this agreement, consensus by the people in the society that, okay, we want this law to be applicable to us. That is them formally accepting the fact that this set of rules they've come up with for the purpose of regulating their conduct should be is accepted by them. So it should be applicable to any person, and it's binding on everything. So once if everybody has accepted that, okay, this law should be binding, there should be some mechanism for the sustainers. One, that is one, to ensure that the law is sustained, and two, is enforced. Because if there is law and there is no provision for how to implement such law, definitely that law will not be sustained. Because for instance, in Nigeria, we have so many laws that are, are just there. We don't even enforce them because the political will is not there to enforce such laws. Then we'll talk about the sources of Nigerian law. From the slide, you can see sources of Nigerian law. When we talk of sources, we are talking of how do the laws in Nigeria, how did we come about the laws in Nigeria? They did not just fall from the sky. So the laws from Nigeria are, first of all, received from the English law. So the common law and doctrine of equity are product of England during the colonial period. So this the common law and doctrine of equity are collectively referred to as the received English law, because it was when we were colonized by the British that they introduced these laws to Nigeria. We had common law. Common law is part of the English law administered by the old common law in England. Basically, before the Norman conquest in England, they don't have a common law. What they have is just normal custom of people. So people were, just as we have our customary law right now. Uh, it's not codified. It's people are just administering it based on the basis of their own locality. So that was how the common law was back then in England. It was based on the custom and tradition of the realm of the people. So there was nothing like a codified law. So when King William became King of England, he sent out itinerant justices. These justices go to administer justice in various communities in England. So, in the course of administering justice, after they are done administering justice based on the custom and traditions of the people of that particular setting or realm, they will come back to the crown. That is, they will come back to the capital. They will sit down and discuss. Okay, I encountered this law in this place. Hmm, this law is good, so let's use this law. I encountered this law in another justice will say, I encountered this law in this place. This law is good. So by doing that, they came up with a number of laws, and those laws were codified, and a common law court was established for the purpose of establishing this law. However, over time, the common law became more concerned about form and procedure rather than administering justice. When I say it became more concerned about form and procedure, I'm saying that rather than looking at administering justice, the common law was more concerned about whether you have adhered to the format of instituting an action. Let's say, for instance, there's a contract. The contract, there's a law back then in England. It's just an example that says if you want to enter an agreement for the sale of chicken, that agreement must be in writing. Then Mr. John decided to sell his chicken without writing, uh, without having it in writing to Mr. Johnson. Then Mr. Johnson came and said, he will not pay him that. He will not pay him the money for the chicken. Haven't slaughtered the chicken and cooked the chicken. He said he's not going to. But because that agreement is not written, common law will say that agreement is not written. So because of that, there is no enforceable right for you. There is no writ for you to take out to get remedy for the wrong committed against you by Mr. Johnson after giving him the chicken he refused to pay. So common law became more concerned about the format and procedure rather than administering justice. So as a result of that, people became dissatisfied. Litigants became dissatisfied. They began to petition the crown. So once they petitioned the crown, like Mr. Johnson now, where his chicken is not the money for his chicken wasn't paid by Mr. John. So what he will do now is he will petition the crown and say, okay, this is what happened because I did not have it in writing. I sold my chicken. So the crown, the people that will listen to that particular matter were the King's Council. And members of the King's Council comprises of the Chancellor, and the Chancellor was a priest. So based on that, he would just use his priestly background to administer justice. So doctrine of equity evolved. So when we talk of doctrine of equity in this context, we are not talking of equity as in fairness. We're talking about as equity as a law developed by the Court of Chancery back then in England for the purpose of mitigating the harshness of common law. So where litigants are dissatisfied, they will just petition the crown. They will know that okay, doctrine of equity will mitigate that harshness. Like now, Mr. John now can approach the crown and say, okay, this is what happened, and the crown will say, and the council will say, based on the doctrine of equity, let equity prevail, pay him his money. So you see, so that there evolves the doctrine of equity, and these laws are still applicable in Nigeria. That's why we have maxims like in equity, like he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. He who seeks equity must do equity. So all these maxims are still applicable in Nigeria and are still applicable by the courts in Nigeria. Then another source of the Nigerian law is the Nigerian legislation. When we say the Nigerian legislation, we're talking about laws made by the National Assembly and the House of Assemblies of various states. So, it's common that sometimes the executive will introduce a bill at the National Assembly, or you see a member will introduce a bill. So that bill subsequently, when assented by the president, becomes a law. That is why we have, for instance, the CAMA that was recently passed into law, the BOFIA that was just recently signed by President Buhari was a bill that was passed by the National Assembly. So now we have a new BOVIA, which is 2020. So these are examples of laws that are made by our legislation. And when you go down to various states, you will see them enacting various laws that are also assented by the governor for them to become law. Then we have customary law. When we talk of customary law, we are talking about the customs, uh, a body of customs and traditions which regulate the various kinds of relationship between members of the community in their traditional setting. Just like the way I mentioned earlier about common law being customs and traditions of people of the realm back then in England. So do we have our customary law in Nigeria, which is still applicable? Because if you go to notorious custom that I know that is applicable in Nigeria is the Benin customary law of inheritance. The one that says where the father dies, the first male child will inherit the property in which the father was staying. So this law has been this particular customary law is notorious that once it gets to any court of law, you don't is judicially noticed. You don't need to prove anything. Once you can provide in your case that you are the male child and you're supposed to inherit, you are the first male child in your family, you're supposed to inherit your father's property, the one he was occupying while he was alive. Then based on the custom of the Benin people, the court will say you are entitled to that property. So the customary law basically is there administered by judges who are well known in the local customs of the people. So then we have the judicial precedent and case law. When we're talking of case law, is interpretation made by court. Once we have a law, sometimes there's this conflict that arises on what the law is saying. After the legislation, or the National Assembly have enacted a law and assented to by a president, sometimes conflict might arise as to the interpretation of a particular section in that law. So it's for the court to decide. So once the court decides and say this is what this particular section is saying, that becomes a law. And this judicial precedent is, if you go to high court and the high court this says this is what the law is and you are not satisfied as a party, you decide to go to court of appeal. From court of appeal, and the court of appeal says the position of that was held by the high court was correct, and you decide to go to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court finally decides that what the high court decided from the beginning when the matter was initiated was right, then that becomes a judicial precedent. So every other court in Nigeria which is subordinate of the Supreme Court must follow that decision laid down by the Supreme Court, where once it pertains to issues and circumstances and facts of similar nature as the one that has already been decided by Supreme Court. So that's why we have judicial precedent slash case law. Then we have international law. We know that some of our laws are influenced by international law because these are treaties, customs and tradition conventions, uh, that we have some treaties, conventions that are domesticated by the Nigerian government, and this by virtue of the constitution that says for any international to be applicable in Nigeria must be domesticated. So once it is domesticated, it becomes part of our law. Examples of such laws that have been domesticated into our laws and form parts of our constitution is when you go to the chapter 4 of the constitution on fundamental human rights. You see that if you check the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights and the African Charter on Human Rights, they are almost similar. So this is how international laws have influenced our own laws, and they are sources of our own laws. So international law is basically there to regulate relationship between different states, different countries. Uh, so having discussed sources of Nigerian uh, laws, what are then we are going to look at the hierarchy of the Nigerian courts. What are the hierarchy of the Nigerian courts? Well, I was talking about precedent and case law. I did mention the Supreme Court as the apex court of the land. When I say apex court of the land, the highest court of the land. Once it decides a matter, it becomes final. A typical example is the example of Imo State, the Imo gubernatorial issue that went to Supreme Court. When the Supreme Court finally decided that Ehedioha wasn't the governor of Imo State, there was nothing he could do. He had to leave the office for the current governor to take over. So that is the Supreme Court exercising its power as the supreme and the final court of the land. Then after the Supreme Court, we have the Court of Appeal. It's next to the Supreme Court. So where matters have been decided by courts of superior records like the State High Court, the Federal High Court, National Industrial Courts, so and other tribunals like the Securities and Exchange Tribunals, tax tribunals. So if parties who are dissatisfied with the judgment of those courts can appeal to the Court of Appeal, there are certain matters that end at the Court of Appeal. Like when it comes to election cases, in the case of National Assembly and State House of Assembly, once the matter, once you appeal to the Court of Appeal, that is where it ends. It ends there. You cannot appeal to the Supreme Court. Then we have the Federal High Court. The Federal High Court is a court of superior jurisdiction. Back then, it used to be a revenue court, but subsequently it evolved. And by virtue of Section 251, sub 1, paragraph F of the Constitution, if you go there, you will see subject matter of jurisdiction of the Federal High Court, matters that can be entertained by the, for instance, matters like that involves company and karma, matters that involve CAC and other companies. These are matters for the Federal High Court. Matters involving uh, trademark, patent, copyright, all these are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the Federal High Court. Then we have the state high courts. The state high courts and that of the FCT have uh, unlimited civil and criminal jurisdiction to entertain matters. Unlimited, with the exception of those matters that fall within the exclusive jurisdiction of the Federal High Court and the National Industrial Court. So the state high court is there to entertain those matters that are not within the exclusive jurisdiction of the Federal High Court and the National Industrial. And the State High Court has unlimited jurisdiction in unlimited jurisdiction in terms of criminal and civil matters. So once you have any matter that is not within the jurisdiction of the Federal High Court, neither is it within the jurisdiction of any of the tribunals that have coordinate jurisdiction with the State High Court, then you are to institute an action at the State High Court. Then we have the National Industrial Courts. The Nigeria Industrial Court is one, just like the Federal High Court is one division, one division. Even though for administrative purposes we have different National Industrial Court in different states, but National Industrial Courts are the National Industrial Court is established for the purpose of deciding matters that relate to master-servant relationship, trade union, any employment issue. You have to bring it to the National Industrial Court. Then we have the Sharia Court. The Sharia Court is there to entertain matters between persons who have subjected themselves to personal Islamic law. So once parties are subject to personal Islamic law, you know already the Quran and the Hadiths are there, the laws are already there. So what the courts will just do, will look at and administer them. Then we have customary courts, which are there to administer customary laws, as I said earlier, the customs and traditions of that locality, of that people of that particular settings. The customary courts are there to administer such laws. Then we have the magistrate court. The customary courts and the area courts have similar jurisdiction. It's just a matter of nomenclature. Because in the south, the customary courts are called the customary courts, while in the north, the area courts are called the area courts. Even though this just I'm just saying it by the way, the area courts in the north even sometimes entertaining matters they are not supposed to entertain. Then we have the magistrate court. The magistrate court is a court of inferior jurisdiction, just like the Sharia court, customary courts, and the area courts. It has criminal and civil jurisdiction over matters with limited jurisdiction. So it's not all subject matter that you can take to the magistrate court, and you have to check out the monetary jurisdiction. So that is it on the hierarchy of Nigerian courts. What is civil law? When we talk of civil law, we're talking about laws that are there to regulate relationship between the various citizens, private citizens. That is your relationship with Mr. A, your relationship with your neighbor. That is why we have civil law. It serves to regulate the conduct of persons in their interpersonal dealings, conferring rights and obligations on individual or juristic persons. So the civil law is just there where your right is infringed upon by another person, your private right. The civil law is there for you to 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 go to the civil law is there for you to take advantage of and get remedy in the courts based on civil matters. That's why, for those of you that are familiar with the law terms and how the lawyers operate, you hear it's a civil case, it's a criminal case, it's a civil case. Civil case just is between private citizens. Then we have the criminal justice system or the criminal law. When we say the criminal law, even though you are committing a crime, even though you are committing that thing against a private person, but because a law that is codified that says if you carry out such thing, that not is a crime against the state. It's not just that person you are hurting the state. That is why when you commit murder, advanced Yahoo in quote and unquote, anything that affects not just that individual, but is going to affect the state. That's why we have the criminal law for it to for the criminal justice system for such people to be punished. And most criminal offenses are codified. They are statutory backed. That means there's a law that says, because the constitution already says for anybody to be punished for any criminal offense, that law must have been uh, um, uh, written and a punishment prescribed. If not, there is no crime. So for all crimes, that's why you see laws. And criminal law is the state that has the right to prosecute. That is why when you hear somebody has killed someone, you cannot go and hire a private lawyer to say to help you prosecute the case. You have to go through either the Ministry of Justice of that state or the Federal Ministry of Justice of Federal Ministry of Justice for you to prosecute that case. The highest you can do with the private lawyer, maybe if it is a crime, he's to write petition to the Ministry of Justice or he's to write petition to police, then police can take over. However, there is an exception where a private lawyer can prosecute in case of criminal law, where he obtains fiat from the AG of the Federation, where it is a federal crime, and AG of the state, where it is a state crime. So it involves enforcement of those rules of conduct, usually statutory. So that is the criminal justice system. That's why we have the judiciary, the police, the EFCC, the ICPC, the Ministry of Justice, the Correctional Service. They are all there to ensure that the criminal justice system functions effectively. Then we are going to look at the regulatory agencies. Sorry, I'm just experiencing a too technical hitch. Okay. Regulatory, relevant regulatory agencies. So, what are the relevant regulatory agencies regulating business in Nigeria? You want to start business in Nigeria. What are those agencies that you need to register with, or you need to know one or two about to know their function, so that you know that okay, this is the reason why this agency is acting the way it is. First of all, we have the Corporate Affairs Commission, which we'll discuss in detail subsequently. We have the Federal Inland Revenue. We'll look at that detail subsequently. Then we have the CBN, which is the Apex Bank, the financial regulatory bank in Nigeria. It is the Apex Bank in Nigeria. It is the bank of the last resort. So the CBN was established by the 1958 Act of CBN, but the current legal framework is this 2007 Act. CBN is there to regulate how banks operate in Nigeria, to regulate the financial dealings and financial institutions, not just banks. All financial institutions in Nigeria is the work of the CBN. But these days we are seeing CBN uh, being stretched, doing so many things like agriculture, like this agricultural loan, so many other things the CBN is involved. Mainly because though it's part of its responsibility, because it's there to ensure the growth of the Nigerian economy. That is why the CBN is always pumping dollars when we see there's lack of dollar and the rest, because it's the responsibility of the CBN to ensure that the Nigerian economy is healthy and is a going concern. No hitches experienced. We have the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, the AMCOM. And AMCOM was basically established in 2010 by the AMCOM Act of 2010, though it was amended in 2019, whereby some changes were made to the act. But basically, AMCOM is there to help in the management and surveillance of toxic assets in banks, toxic assets in the financial system in Nigeria, to ensure that banks' balance sheets are balanced, and to severe toxic assets and non-performing loans. When we talk non-performing loans, we are talking about loans that are not being repaid by people who borrowed from those financial institutions. So it's the responsibility of AMCOM to ensure that there's liquidity flow in the financial institution in Nigeria. Let me give you an example of how AMCOM operates. Let's say Mr. Johnson, who runs a company, Johnson Limited, borrows money from GT Bank, and he was unable to pay that money over time. AMCOM will approach GT and say, what loans do you have that are not performing well? Uh, so it's the responsibility of GT now to say, okay, we have this, and this loans that are not being repaid. So AMCOM will say, okay, we are going to buy off that loan from you. So they'll buy off the loan from GT Bank. So now that loan borrowed by Johnson and Johnson Limited is now owned to AMCOM. So AMCOM will go after Mr. Johnson and Johnson Limited because it is now indebted to it. So basically, AMCOM is just there to ensure that there's money to go around. There's money for people to borrow. Because if people are not repaying their money and there's no money within the financial institution, it's going to affect the liquidity flow. Then we have the National Agency for Food and Drug Organization and Control. We look at that through in detail subsequently. Then we have the Standard Organization of Nigeria. We'll look at that through in detail subsequently. Then the Federal Capital Development Authority and the State Commissioner for Lands Local Government Council. Once you want to do any business that involves land, that will involve you constructing something, then the FCDA is there for you to approach in Abuja. While if you're in another state or in the local government, you know where to go to do your dealings. Then let's look at the Corporate Affairs Commission. Corporate Affairs Commission. So the Corporate Affairs Commission was established by the Companies and Allied Matters Act 1990, which, if you are current and abreast with the happenings in Nigeria, you know that it has been amended to be the AMCOM 2020, which was recently signed by the president into law. So it is Corporate Affairs Commission is a regulatory agency in charge of registration and regulation of business and non-business organization, such as companies, business name, incorporated trustees. So if you have a business you are running that is not registered, you have an NGO you are running, it's not registered, the appropriate agency to approach is the Corporate Affairs Commission. So, by virtue of Section 7 Sub 1 of CAMA, it sets out the main function of CAC to include one, regulation, supervision of the formation, incorporation, management and winding up of companies, maintain a company's registry in all states of the federation. So these are the responsibilities of CAC. It also includes the power to carry out investigation into the affairs of the company if the situation demand. Let's quickly have a rundown of this function. Regulation. After you've registered your company, CAC still regulates your company because you need to be filing annual returns to CAC after 18 months of incorporation. That's if your company, that's if you registered a company or an NGO. For business name, there is no such break for you, because why they give such break is for the business to become a going concern. Then you have the supervision of the formation. At the stage of forming your company, the CAC also plays a vital role, because before the formation, you have to submit application for incorporation of any business name or any company to CAC. For instance, now there are recent policies in CAC that that before you register an NGO, you must submit the name of the NGO to the Registrar General for approval, for consent. So these are things, these are part of the role as CAC is playing to supervise the formation of such organizations. Then you have incorporation. After you filled your forms, it's the responsibility of CAC to incorporate your company and with issue you a certificate to that effect. Then you have the management, because there are changes you need to do. Sometimes you need to change directors, secretaries, is all you need to file those things to CAC. That's why it maintains a company registry. Then you have the management. Sometimes CAC can take over the management of companies. Well, once those companies are deviating from the object, because before you register any business name, you have to or company, you have to state the object of that company. What is that company doing? So once CAC carries out investigation and discovers that, or it has a hint that the object you registered with them is not what you are using in carrying out is not what you registered the company, the objects which you said you use the company for is not what you are using the company for. In that case, CAC can go to court, obtain court order, and take over the affairs of that company. Though CAC will not just go to, your company will have to be put on notice to go to court to challenge whatever proposition CAC is putting before the court, and the reason CAC is given for wanting to take over the affairs of that company. That is why this recent karma is not like churches complaining that why should the trustees CAC be given powers to take over from the trustees of a particular church. No, CAC will not just take over. It has to conduct an investigation and even institute a matter in court. It has to do with an order of court. And that particular organization must be given the opportunity to hear, because every party is entitled to fair hearing. Then we have the Federal Inland Revenue Service. When we say a Federal Inland Revenue Service, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, it wasn't an autonomous organ. It used to be an arm of the Federal Board of Inland Revenue. It used to be an arm of the Federal Board of Inland Revenue. However, in 2007, the act establishing the FIRS decided to make it an autonomous organ, whereby the Federal Board of Inland Revenue is just there to roll out general policy for the FIRS. So the FIRS is in charge of the collection and administration of federal and corporate taxes. So for the administration and collection of corporate taxes is the responsibility of the Federal Inland Revenue. It's also responsible for control and administer of different taxes and laws specified in Schedule 1 of the FIRS Act. So it also controls and administers the different tax laws and everything. So it's also the responsibility of the Federal Inland Revenue to do that. It's also by virtue of Section 25 of the FIRS Act, it empowers it to administer and enforce the various tax enactments. When we talk of the various tax enactments, we're talking of the Stamp Duty Act, we're talking of the Personal Income Tax Act, we're talking of the Company Income Tax Act. All these are the various enactments under the FIRS. It has by the Section 25 of its Act empowers it to administer and enforce such laws. So that's there are various tax enactments administered by by FIRS. But we are going to look at the VAT, the value added tax, which is mainly the day-to-day tax that everybody in Nigeria is being taxed. Because every time you go to buy a product in a shop, they will tax you for VAT. As you are buying a recharge card to buying airtime, you are also being taxed for VAT. So as prospective business people or people that are into business, or you are offering any service, you ought to be remitting your VAT to the federal government through your local VAT office, and which is the FIRS. And what is VAT? VAT is simply a value-added tax. It is a consumption tax that is levied repeatedly on a product or service being offered to the public. That is why I said every time you buy a recharge card, every time you make a call, you will see if you use MTN, because that's the line I use, you will see VAT, VAT so amount. Your call is so amount, VAT is so amount. If you make call 20 times, they will remove VAT for that service they are offering you. VAT. And you know the VAT was recently increased by Buhari from 5% to 7%, which definitely will have an effect on the price of goods. So as prospective business people, you need to also remit your VAT. You get your VAT from the consumers, then you remit to the federal government, be it weekly, monthly, how you decide to want to remit it after registration with your local VAT office, that is any FIRS office closest to you. Though it's not all products that are VATable, because if you go to the Finance Act of 2019, you get to see some things that are not VATable, not all products, even though some people take advantage of that. Products that are not even VATable, they will say you pay VAT, you pay VAT. So that is it on FIRS. Let's quickly look at registration with Standard Organization of Nigeria. So, Standard Organization of Nigeria is another agency responsible for uh, standardizing and regulating the quality of all products in Nigeria. To not all products in Nigeria, because there are certain products that are not the responsibility of Standard Organization of Nigeria. They are meant for NAFDAC. And the Standard Organization of Nigeria, as we know, has procedure of registration. Let's say you are into the manufacture of, you are into manufacturing locally, or you are into importing. There are some goods that are within the inventory of the Standard Organization of Nigeria that you must certify with them that these products or particular thing you are shipping or you intend to manufacture locally in Nigeria is standardized. Without doing that, your product will be considered counterfeit. And once they are carrying out their responsibility, they will confiscate such your products for being substandard, because what they will use is their sign, the standards, or that you've gotten standardization from them. If they ask and you don't have, it becomes a problem for you. Your products will be seized, be it products locally manufactured or be it products that you intend to ship. So the registration with Standard Organization of Nigeria is in two folds. That means there's the e-product registration. That's the registration where you go to their site and you register. Then there is the MANCAP registration. That is mandatory. MANCAP is sorry, uh, how we say, oh, the e-registration is, you go there, you see an inventory of products that can be registered. So you just enter and register. Then we have the the mandatory confirmatory assessment program. That one too is for locally manufactured products, whereby if you want to, is for them to assess that that product you intend to manufacture locally is of standard. And they also have what we call the Standard Organization of Nigeria Conformity Assessment Program for goods shipped into Nigeria. This one, there is a particular site dedicated for that. If you go there, you will see a guideline of products that are meant, if you are shipping, you fill a form that this is the product I intend to ship and the rest. So it's for them to to see that that product is of standard before you ship it into Nigeria. So I'm going to give you some sites, because if we say we are going to discuss this method of registration, we are not going to finish this class today, because it's quite much. but I'm going to refer you to some sites. If those of you that are into manufacture or you intend to go into manufacture at your leisure time, you could just Google, or you could just go to the site and see what the requirements are, what the procedures are for registration with Standard Organization of Nigeria. Is it you want to do the e-product registration, or you want to do the mandatory confirmatory assessment program, or you want to do the Standard Organization confirmatory assessment for goods shipped into Nigeria? So basically, if you want to check on Standard Organization of Nigeria conformity assessment program, which they refer to as SOMCAP, for goods shipped into Nigeria, you can go to www.cotina.com. Cotina is spelled COTEENA.com, or you could just NA.com, that's Cotina, or you could just visit Google, then type export guide to Nigeria. Export guide to Nigeria. Once you type export guide to Nigeria, it's going to bring that uh, Standard Organization of Nigerian Conformity assessment. Then, in case you want to see the registration for the e-registration, I'm going to refer to you. There's this site www.618bees.com. The bees is spelled as in bees as the inside bees. Then you add bees.com. So when you go to this site, you will see what are the procedures for registration. The two procedures I mentioned, you see them in details. The e-product and the MANCAP, which is the mandatory assessment, the mandatory conformity assessment program of Standard Organization of Nigeria. So basically, the functions of Standard Organization of Nigeria include to investigate the quality of facilities, as you can see on the slide. The first one. The second one is to ensure reference standard for calibration, to compile an inventory of products, requiring standardization, to foster interest in the recommendation and maintenance of acceptable standard for industry, to register and regulate standard. Excuse me, I'm just experiencing a little hitch. Okay. Guess it's fixed. To advise state and federal development departments of government on specific problems relating to standards and the rest. So these are some of the functions of Standard Organization of Nigeria. Just give me a minute. I want to fix something. Please. I want it to disappear because it's affecting. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's back. Okay, now we are going to look at registration with NAFDAC. As you can recall earlier, I said it's not everything that is, it's not all products that are standardized by the Standard Organization of Nigeria. NAFDAC also has a role to play when it comes to uh, the certification of products before it is distributed, uh, imported, or manufactured to Nigerians. So NAFDAC has the mandate for controlling, maintaining, distribution, advertising, exportation, importation, manufacture, and the registration of the categories of products such as foods, drugs, medical devices, and cosmetics. These are, if you want to deal with this category of products and you want to do distribution, advertising, exportation, importation, manufacture, uh, registration of such food of products like food, drugs, medical devices, cosmetics, etc., are the functions and the responsibilities of NAFDAC to register that for you. So all businesses dealing in food and related products are subject to regulation by NAFDAC, as it is unlawful to market any drugs or consumable goods in Nigeria to the public without registration with NAFDAC. That is why subconsciously over time, if you want to buy something in a pharmacy or want to buy water, food products, we check, is this product registered with NAFDAC? So that is why it's very important for you that if you want to go into production or importation of any of these products that is administered by NAFDAC, make sure you obtain the NAFDAC registration number. If not, your products will be unlawful to market. So NAFDAC registered different categories of product, which includes the following. What are the different categories of product administered by NAFDAC? Includes food and water, drugs and medical devices, herbals and cosmetics, vaccines and biologics, chemicals, veterinary products, and narcotics. So let's see, you want to go into food and water, you need NAFDAC. You want to go into drugs and medical devices, you need NAFDAC. You want to go into herbals and cosmetics, you need NAFDAC. You want to go into vaccines and biologics, you need NAFDAC. Chemicals, you need NAFDAC. Veterinary products and narcotics, you need NAFDAC. So you need to register with NAFDAC for you to be able to distribute your products in the market or manufacture or even import. Though specific documentation vary for different drugs and food categories, the registration procedure is similar and is basically in two-stage process. One is application to bring samples, especially when you want to import. Then the other is application for full registration of products, be it locally manufactured uh, locally manufactured or imported. So we're going to look at some key requirements for registration of drugs with NAFDAC. Because if we say we are going to look at food, water, drugs, medical devices, we are going to spend the whole day and even continue next. So basically, the NAFDAC, the registration with NAFDAC is can be manual and it can be e-registration. So we are going to look at the key requirements, what you need to submit to NAFDAC. If, let's say, for example, you want to import drugs or you want to distribute drugs or you want to manufacture drugs. So what I did here, I just mixed everything together because we are just looking at the key requirements. It's not like we're going to like look at this in everything in details. It's just like we are looking at the key requirements. If and we are using drugs, we will not look at food, we will not look at water. We just use drug and as for the purpose of this class. For any detailed explanation, for any detailed procedure on how to go about registration with NAFDAC, you can go to their office if you're in Abuja at Zone 7, or you could simply log on to their site, or you could go to the e-registration platform, which is NAPAMS, which I will discuss subsequently. So what are the key requirements? What are those key requirements if you want to register drugs with NAFDAC? So first of all, you need to know that application is on a single product basis. When we say application is on a single product basis, what it means here is that, let's say you want to register uh, a drug for malaria and the drug for stomach ache. You cannot apply for one NAFDAC registration number for the two. You have to apply differently for the drug for stomach ache, apply differently for the drug for the headache. So it's separate, it's not the same. So that's why they say application is on a single product basis. Written application stating the name of the manufacturer and the name. If it is a brand name, you have to state the name of the brand. Let's say it's Pfizer. Though Pfizer is a big pharmaceutical company, so you have to state. You complete your NAFDAC application form, certificate of incorporation with the corporate if it's a company. Then we have 5 copies of product dossier. 5 copies of the product dossier means a collection of the various documents and data, including data and regulatory documentation concerning research, development, safety, efficacy of the licensed products. So if you are applying, you have to apply with these things to NAFDAC: 3 packs of the product samples, notarized original copy of the duly executed power of attorney from the product manufacturer. When we said notarized original copy of the duly executed power of attorney, power of attorney here simply means is a document that is given to another person, that that person should act in the state of the donor of that power. Let's say Mr. Johnson says he wants Mr. John to carry out to be selling his product in Nigeria under the name of Johnson and Johnson Limited. So what Mr. Johnson will now execute, or what Johnson and Johnson Limited will now execute with Mr. John is power of attorney, giving Mr. John the authority to manufacture, distribute that drug in Nigeria. So the requirement is saying that that power of attorney given to Mr. John must be notarized by in that country of origin where that uh, power of attorney was given. So it must be notarized, and the certificate also where the right to where he is given the power to manufacture, the certificate of manufacture issued by the competent health or regulatory authority in the country of origin must be authenticated by the Nigerian mission in that country. So the notarization and the authentication of any certificate of manufacture or manufacturing agreement entered to by parties for the purpose of manufacturing or distributing drugs in Nigeria. Let's say Pfizer now enter into an agreement, manufacturing agreement with another company, pharmaceutical company in Nigeria. For that company to start distributing that Pfizer, that drug they are trying to import from Pfizer, let's say the COVID-19 vaccine now that Pfizer are on the verge of distributing. So let's say another company in Nigeria want to distribute the same vaccine now. So all this power of attorney, certificate of manufacture, or let's say they are even giving them the franchise to come and produce the vaccine in Nigeria. So all this, their agreement must be notarized, must be authenticated by Nigerian mission in, let's say Pfizer is in India, Nigerian mission in India. Then for instance, if there is no Nigerian mission in India, or the Nigerian mission in India is closed down due to one technical problem or the other, you can approach any foreign mission, ECOWAS foreign mission, or the British High Commission to authenticate your manufacturing agreement and the rest. Then current warhead organization good manufacturing practice certificate for the manufacturer authenticated by the Nigerian mission also is something you need. Then if you want to go into distribution and sale of drugs, just like the way pharmacies do, the pharmacy we have, you have to bring your certificate of pharmaceutical product duly issued and authenticated, current superintendent pharmacist license to practice issued by the Pharmaceutical Council of Nigeria, premises registration license from the Pharmacist Council of Nigeria, certification of brand name with trademark registry in the Ministry of Commerce. This applies to importation and manufacturing. you have to register with the Trade, Patent and Design Department of the Nigerian Ministry of Commerce, which if you are in Abuja here, the office is at Area 1, and they have agents. If you want to register your trademark, you can go there to register your trademark. Then you have letter of invitation. You have to invite NAFDAC to go and inspect the factory, the manufacturing factory in the country where the drug is originating. So they will go to the plant and inspect. Then you pay your applicable fee. So these are the key requirements if you want to register your any drug you are either manufacturing locally, or you want to open a pharmacy, or you want to import a drug. Then I said earlier that NAFDAC recently introduced another method of registration, the e-registration, and they call that the NAFDAC Automated Product Administration and Monitoring System. So it's simply called NAPAMS, NAPAMS, NAFDAC Automated Product Administration and Monitoring System. So how you do that is you first of all go to www.napams.org. When you go to www.napams.org, you sign up, you register an account as a client. After signing in and logging in, you 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 complete the application form. I believe the application form will just be like the manual, like the forms you filled if you had approached the office manually. Because once you see the categories of products you want to register, is it food, drugs, water, herbals, medical devices, you see the forms are there. You after you fill your form, you make application. Then it's not as easy as I'm saying, because the way I'm saying is like ABCD. You just if you are experiencing any technical issues, there are numbers on the site that you can call. Though what I cannot promise you is how effective the system is, because it's something they just introduced recently. I believe they will keep working on it, they will keep improving until it becomes better. So this is it on the various regulatory agencies. For the purpose of this class, we looked at, we looked at the Corporate Affairs Commission, the FIRS, the AMCOM, CBN, and the rest. So what I expect you participants to, to know now is to have a basic idea of this, the roles and functions of these agencies when it comes to business in Nigeria. That's basically what I expect from you participants. You must not know everything. You must not have deep root knowledge of these agencies. But I believe if someone should meet you now and say, what is the function of FIRS, what is the function of Corporate Affairs Commission when it comes to when it comes to regulation of business in Nigeria, you'll be able to say one or two. Then let's look at types of business organization and the legal implication of the various types of business organization and the legal implication of the various types. So what are the various types of business organizations we have, and what is the implication of running when you decide to say I want to run this particular business organization? What is the implication? So a business organization simply means is a legitimate venture to make profit. Once you're into any legitimate venture to make profit, then you are running a business organization. Watch, the main word there is legitimate. You cannot say illegitimate. So if you are into any illegitimate venture, then definitely you are not running a business organization. You are running a rogue business organization. So what are the types of this business organization? We have sole proprietorship, we have partnership, we have company. So we are going to look at each one and its implication. What is the implication of running sole proprietorship? What is the implication of legal implication of running partnership? What is the legal implication of running a company? When we say sole proprietorship, as the name implies, sole proprietorship, it means one. It means one person running his business. He makes the decision alone. He enjoys the profit alone. He dies with his business. If the business dies, if he dies, the business dies. He does his things alone. So So a sole owner of business, the legal implication of running a sole proprietorship is that he has unlimited liabilities. Unlimited. Unlimited liabilities. That is when he collects loans, debt, rent, his liabilities are personal. They will go after him personally. The sole owner is personally liable for that debt, liabilities of the business. So unlike companies which we'll look at subsequently, where the company is said to be the one liable and the person or the directors or shareholders are said to be liable to the extent of their investment or shares in that company. Unlike in sole proprietorship, you're personally liable. Let me break it down in simple form. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson runs Johnson Business Ventures and he went and borrowed money from the bank. He borrowed money from the bank, he's unable to pay back, and now the bank is coming after Mr. Johnson for their money. If the bank haven't gone to court, gotten judgment, they want to go to the bank, they want to go after Mr. Johnson for their money. They are not coming to go after Johnson Business Venture. They are coming after Mr. Johnson personally. They will come after his cars, his personal cars, his television, chairs, anything is in his house that will satisfy the debt or the loan. So that's the implication of running a sole proprietorship. You become personally liable. Then even if you are running a sole proprietorship, even if it's registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission, does not become a separate legal personality from the sole owner. The owner's personal assets and businesses are inseparable. You are still running a sole proprietorship. The only thing about registration with CAC is that you might decide to have one or more proprietors, but that is partnership now, which we'll talk about subsequently. Because with the CAC, if you want to register a business name as a sole proprietor, you can register a business name as a sole proprietor. You can register a business name as as partners. So let's look at partnership now. So basically, when we are talking of partnership, we are talking about where two or more persons come together and decide to go into business together. That means Mr. John and Mr. Johnson haven't looked at all the various options available, have decided that we want to run a business together. So that's partnership, people coming together. And one thing about partnership, there must be this agreement that the money will be shared, sorry, the profits will be shared equally. There must be this agreement that the profits will be shared equally. That's one thing about partnership. So partners must agree that profits must be shared equally, except otherwise, because it's your partnership, you can decide otherwise. Where you won't partake in the sharing of profit, don't regard yourself as a partner in that partnership. There are two partnerships. We can have general partners, we can have limited partners. General partners in the sense that they are involved in the day-to-day running of the business. That's why we said, except in the case of partners who are limited. General partners have unlimited liabilities similar to a sole proprietorship. So once you are running general partnership, you decide that Mr. John and Mr. Johnson decide that, okay, we want to run a general partnership. And general partnership in the sense that both parties, Mr. John and Mr. Johnson, will be involved actively in the running of the business. One party is not saying, uh, I don't want to be actively involved in the running of the business. But in case of general partners, both of them are actively involved in the running of the business. And general partners are at risk of having their personal belongings seized to offset the debt and liabilities of the partnership business, because it's a business made up of two or more partners, each sharing the business's debt, liabilities, and assets. So that's general partnership for you. But in the case of limited partnership, two or more parties go into business together, but one or more of the partners are only liable up to the amount of investment. Mr. John, Mr. Johnson decided that okay, they want to go into partnership. But Mr. John says, Mr. Johnson, I want to go into this partnership with you, but I want to be a limited partner. I don't want to be actively involved in the running of today day-to-day business. So because of that, I just want to invest and sit back and watch you run the business. Mr. John will tell Mr. Johnson. So in that case, Mr. John will become a limited partner. Mr. John will become a limited partner, and he will not be personally liable for any debt that has been incurred by the partnership. His debt is limited to his investment, the amount of investment. Investors, the organization which the business is indebted to cannot come after his personal belongings because he's just a limited partner. So how can you decide that you want to be a limited partner, you want to be a general partner? It's up to you partners in the business. It's left for you to decide by virtue of your agreement that, okay, I want to be a limited partner. I want us to run a general partnership. I want us to run a limited partnership. So basically, these are the legal implications of running partnership. Then what is the legal implication of running a company? Once you decide that, okay, this company, I want to register a company. Let's say you are running a business name. You say, okay, this time I want to upgrade. I want to upgrade to a company. I want to upgrade uh, to my business name to a company. I want to register my business to become a company. What is the legal effect? So from the date they issue you a certificate, the Corporate Affairs Commission issue you a certificate saying that this your business is now a company, or this business you are running, which was initially not registered, now registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission, and a certificate issued. And once that certificate is issued, your company now becomes a separate legal personality from you. You can either only be a shareholder or a director in that company. That is why in law companies are referred to as artificial persons, because they are separate from their promoters, they are separate from their shareholders, they are separate from their directors. So your liability as a shareholder in that company is only limited to your shares in the company. Subsequently, we'll talk of companies in details. So you cannot be held personally liable for any debt collected by that company. For instance, Mr. Johnson, who is running Johnson Business Ventures, decides to upgrade his business to a company and decides to register Johnson and Johnson Nigerian Limited. And he used Johnson Nigerian Limited to borrow money from GT Bank, where Johnson Nigeria Limited defaults in paying back that loan. The Guarantee Trust Bank cannot come after Mr. Johnson personally. Rather, it will go after assets acquired in the name of Johnson and Johnson Limited. So these are the implications of if you decide to run a company. The company, being a human being of its own, can do the following in its registered name. It can buy and own properties. That's why if you check some certificate of occupancy, you get to see names of companies on the certificate rather than individuals. You get to see these are names of companies like uh, you see a company like John and Johnson Nigeria Limited now owning a property because it's an artificial person in law and it can do that. And so any debt, liabilities, any money the company borrows, it's borrowing its name. It can enter into contract. You will see companies entering into contracts, can sue and be sued. You can see Johnson and Johnson Nigeria Limited can sue and it can also be sued. It enjoys perpetual succession. Always say perpetual succession, it lives forever. Johnson and Johnson Nigeria Limited can live forever. If Mr. Johnson, who is the initial shareholder of the company, is fed up and feels like he doesn't want to continue, he can just transfer his shares, he can sell his shares in the company, and another shareholder can take over. For instance, now let's use First Bank. If you check First Bank, you see, I guess it's registered since 1849 or something. Are you telling me that the initial shareholders and directors of First Bank are still alive? No, but because First Bank in law is considered as an artificial person, so it's said to have a perpetual succession. It lives forever. and it can apply for a loan in its registered name. So once you decide to register a company, the advantage is that you can borrow money in the name of the company, you can enter into contract in the name of the company, you can sue in the name of the company, except where there's fraud. Once there's fraud, then that privilege you're enjoying will not be there, because there's what we call in law lifting the veil. The courts will lift the veil to see who are those behind the company and who are those who committed that fraud. Even though the company is an artificial person, it cannot be said to commit a fraud or something. So these are business organizations and their legal implication. Now we are going to look at small registration of business and non-business organization, and why you need to register your business. Why do I have to register my business? I don't know whether you are aware of uh, the recent scheme which the federal government just began. That is, it has aggregators in different states where people can approach and send their details, where they will register business name for them for free. It's not for free. It's for free, quite sure, but the aim is to increase the tax net. Federal government are trying to bring more businesses into the tax net, more businesses to pay tax. That is the idea behind that by the federal government. So registration of business, as I have said and I'm saying for the optic time, is done at the Corporate Affairs Commission, whether be it a business name or a company corporation. Any business, whether small or large, will in the long run benefit from corporate fiscal and product registration. A registered business with corporate is unknown to law and therefore cannot transact some official businesses, e.g., borrowing from the bank, while a registered product from food products with NAFDAC will attract low and limited patronage and may be seized and producing premises sealed. So once you fail to register your business, there are some things you will not enjoy. Let's say there are incentives now. For example, during this lockdown and pandemic, if you are familiar with the happenings in England, you will see the government there has been releasing funds for small businesses. And those ones, the businesses that will get to enjoy those funds are those ones that are paying their tax. Even in Nigeria, the federal government uh, developed a program, rolled out a program for called the Survival Scheme, whereby companies get to apply for schools and companies, registered businesses that have been paying their tax, registered and paying their tax to benefit from such a program for the purpose of ameliorating the sufferings the, the, the damages they suffered due to the pandemic. So if your business is not registered, you cannot enjoy such incentives by federal government. Registration for tax is also an important social responsibility from the legal and moral angle. So you ought to register your business. So small business startup procedure. You want to start up a business. First of all, you need to look for a suitable business name to support your idea. Sometimes the name should should give consumers an idea of the product or service you're offering. Because by doing that, people will have an idea of this is what this person is offering, or this is what this person is selling. Then you identify a suitable business location. You will not go and start business where you have over 30 vendors that are into this into that are offering the same service or selling the same product. I guess you look for something that is scarce, because business people are problem solvers. They solve the problem and in turn they gain money. So you have to look for a particular problem you need to solve in a particular locality before you go into your business. Then register the name with the corporate. Make sure you choose a name that is easy to pronounce, remember, and has relationship with the type of business. As I said earlier, register with the Federal Inland Revenue Service as your value added tax collection point, because VAT is very important. As I said, it's consumption tax that is levied repeatedly. So as long as you'll be selling or offering that service, you need to be repeating your VAT to the federal government through the FIRS. Then register your product with NAFDAC where it's within the categories of products that have been started by NAFDAC if you intend to sell any of the products that are administered. Then register with the standard organization if you are producing industrial goods or any goods that fall within their inventory. So you need to do that. Then, what are the procedures and documents to be submitted to CAC for registration of a business name? You are running a sole proprietorship, you are running a partnership, and now you want to register it as a business name with the CAC. What are those documents you need to submit to CAC? What are the procedures? So these are what we look at right now. So by the time we're done with this particular topic, you have an idea of how you go about registering your business with CAC. Before I begin to talk about reservation of name on CAC portal, there are categories of persons that are accredited by CAC for the purpose of registering your business name and companies and non-governmental organization. And moreover, furthermore, CAC I think in the last 2 years have introduced another means of registration whereby proprietors, if you are a proprietor or you are a partner in a business, you can create a portal with the CAC and begin registration yourself. Like in this case now, you want to register your own business name, you can go to CAC side, register, create your own portal. But where you don't want to do that, there are agents available to help you do that. Who are these agents? These are persons that are accredited by CAC to register companies, business name, and incorporated. They normally have their ID cards with them indicating that they are agents of CAC and they can register companies on your behalf. So they have automatically, once they are accredited by CAC, they create a portal for them for the purpose of registering these business names and companies. So the CAC portal, first of all, you log into the portal. After, for if you want to register as proprietor, you log into your portal, you get a name. The name must not be a name that is similar to another name, or it must not be a name that is used. It must not be Chamber of Commerce, not be Abuja or something. It should be a name that is not in conflict with any of the guidelines provided by CAC for choosing of names. As you want to impute the name on your portal, a guideline will pop up like telling you that these are the names that you are not supposed to impute. These names that are similar, names that are in use, and the rest. So once you've gotten a name, you put the name. After you've inserted the name, you submit the name to CAC. CAC will look at the name. If it does not contravene any of the guidelines for approval of name, CAC will approve the name and will send an email to you showing telling you that the name has been approved. By the way, the reservation is not free. You pay close to 700 naira to do that. But agents will charge you more than that because of their work. Even the reservation is work. Because some customers are fond of after you reserved the name for them, they will not come back to come and do the registration. So some agents will even charge you for the reservation of name. Because after the reservation, you can go ahead and, and and use a different agent to register your business. So after they've approved the name for you, it will be reserved for 60 days. 60 days until payment. So once you fill your form and you've not made payment, at the expiration of 60 days, you lose everything. You even lose the name. And what's the implication of losing the name? It means that another person can apply in that name and use the name and you lose the name. So once you yeah, the name is approved and the code is sent. There's a code that will be sent to you. You input the code, which will direct you to where you fill a form. You duly complete the form where you state the nature of the business you intend to run, the information page of your national identity card, driver's license, voter's card, or international passport of the proprietor or proprietors, depending on the number of proprietors you have, or you enter them in the form. Then after you've entered all the necessary information in the form, because you will see it there, you will download the form, then parties will sign the form, you attach passport, then you upload the form. There is a procedure for uploading the form. It's all there on the portal where you upload the form. After you upload the form, after filling the form, you make payment. After you've made your payment, uh, you upload the form and your evidence of payment to CAC. Now CAC will look at it. After looking at it, they will, if there is nothing to query, they will not query it, then they will approve the name for you. So what are the examples of business name? You have Taiwo, and Taiwo, like the Johnson Business Venture I've been using, also is the business name. So what are the procedures and documents to be submitted to CAC for registration of a company? So we've looked at business name now. So let's say you don't want to register a business name, you want to register a company with the CAC. What are the procedure? Basically, you need to know that there are different types of company. We have the private limited company, we have the unlimited company, we have the private public limited company, we have company limited by guarantee. So, but for the purpose of this class and for the purpose of the kind of business you'll be running, I guess it's a small business. So the most recommended kind of company as register is a private limited company. And by the former uh, Karma, which is the former Karma, because CAC are yet to implement the new Karma. That is why you still have to have at least two directors and at least two shareholders for you to proceed with your registration. In the absence of that, you cannot proceed with your registration. So private limited company, you have to have 2 to 50 shareholders only with limited at the end of its name, because if you are putting the name on deciding the name of your company you want to register, there must be limited at the end. If not, CAC will not even look at that name. It has to have limited at the end. And the company may also be registered as a limited company with 2 to unlimited numbers of shareholders. So, but as I said, for the purpose of this class, you are just uh, intend to run a small business. So the recommended company for you is the private limited company. Sorry, is the private limited company, except where the company has grown and which you can convert your private limited companies to public limited company, which are usually quoted at at the stock exchange market and are highly regulated by Securities and Exchange Commission. So private company is more suited for small and medium businesses. So the first step to registration, as we said while discussing business name, is reservation of the proposed name, and the name must be in line with the guidelines for selecting names. It must not be in use, it must not be restricted, it must not be carry the name of a state or Abuja, because that one you have to obtain consent. It must not carry International Chamber of Commerce, all sorts of names. So at the time you want to impute the name, it will give you an idea of names you're not supposed to use. So let's say Mr. Johnson now wants to register Johnson and Johnson Limited. Once he inserts Johnson and Johnson Limited, and there is no similar name, there is no similar company, there's no company using such similar name, and there is no uh, uh, such name in use, CC will approve Johnson and Johnson Limited for Mr. Johnson with a reserve for 60 days until payment. So once he has made payment, you can allow the company to last for like, but it's good to complete your registration on time. But make sure the 60 days is on to payment, because once you don't make payment and the 60 days expire, you lose the name and all the things you filled so far regarding that particular registration. So the first step to registration is propose name. Then you duly complete the forms, the registration forms, which will demand the fact that the share capital of the company, which is minimum, which is 1 million. When we say share capital of the company, 1 million, we're not saying you are going to pay CAC 1 million. It's just an artificial valuation of that company. That company is worth 1 million shares. And you are dividing the shares among your shareholders into so number of shares. You get it. So that's the purpose the of doing that. So the it will ask you the share capital of the company, which minimum is 1 million, even though Kama will tell you for private companies 10,000, for public companies 50,000. But CAC, these are some things that are subject to guidelines and policies. CAC will tell you for private limited companies 1 million share capital. Then that's for small companies. The minimum share capital is 1 million. There are some companies like Bureau de Change. If you want to register, the minimum is 35 million share capital, which your share capital determines the money you pay as registration fee. So once the name is approved, you fill the directors, the shareholders, the object of the company, and the rest. You download the form where you you make payment. So once you make payment, you download the form, you sign the forms. So in the course of filling the forms, you see the information required are basically the directors. Who are the directors? The secretary, the shareholders of the companies, the object of the company. The object of the company will be contained in the memorandum. Memorandum is there to regulate the relationship of the company with outsiders, while articles of association is there to regulate the relationship of members of that company within that company. So by the time you feel and you adopt these things, you have your company, you upload the document, CAC will go through it. If there's nothing to query, CAC will approve your company, and you have your company register and your certificate issue. Is your company, though in law we regard your company as an artificial person. So you've given birth to an artificial person. You are the natural person, the company is the artificial person. And we talked about the implication of registering a company. Now it can sue and sue in its own name, it can buy property in its name, it has perpetual succession and etc. So I'm going to show you just is not really what is obtainable right now as regards registration of company when it comes to payment. It's just to give you an idea of if you want to register companies under Part A of Karma, 10,000, which is not so. If you after this class, or you can make inquiries, give you the fees to register a company if you want to know that. This is just guide, because to register business name, this and the rest, these are just guides for you to know. Because something of fees with the Corporate Affairs Commission is something that is subject to policy change at any time. So here I just decided to use this one as just for you to have an idea of what the fees is like and the rest. So look at we've discussed. So we are going to discuss finally our last topic, which is uh, the law of contract. The law of contract is a course on its own, but we just picked those basic elements you need to know. Because if you have the textbook on law of contract, the Nigerian textbook alone is like 600 and something pages. Then if I talk of we have some foreign textbooks like Chiti on contract, and the Nigerian textbook is Sagi. So these are is just for you, because once you register your business, what you'll be entering into with your customers is contract. Your day-to-day dealings with your customers is contract. It's not like contract is something special that you must sit down and write. So as we discuss this law of contract, you get to know that even your conduct can amount to contract. What you utter orally can amount to contract. So what is contract? Contract is an enforceable legal obligations agreed upon. Enforceable legal obligations agreed upon. you see, it's enforceable and it must be legal, just like business organization. It must be something legitimate. So is contract. It must be legal. Anything that is illegal is null and void ab initio. Like we'll look at that subsequently. Then, what are the features of a valid contract? the Let me discuss the first three basic elements, which are the offer, acceptance, and consideration. When we say offer, is you making an offer to somebody to come and buy something from you. Mr. Johnson has a car and he's offering it to Mr. John to buy. That's another form of offer. Another form of offer is when you go to supermarkets, you go to all these big markets, supermarkets, you will see them displaying their products on the shelf. So that display of products in law of contract is what we call invitation to treaty. That's invitation. You, when you pick it and go to the cashier, saying you want to buy this, you are making an offer to the cashier that I want to buy this. So that amounts to offer too. Then there's a situation where if you check newspapers, you see where federal government agencies are advertising invitation to tender, invitation to tender. That invitation to tender is not offer. That is invitation to treaty, because they are saying there are projects to be carried out. Come and submit your application to be a contractor. You submitting that application is an offer. So you can see offer can take various forms. It must not be somebody coming to offer to you or you offering to somebody that you want to buy a product from him. Then once there is offer, there must be acceptance. Mr. Johnson approaching Mr. John that I want to sell my car to you. A Mercedes Benz 350 2019 for 50,000 naira. There must be acceptance on the part of Mr. John for you to say there is a contract. In the absence of acceptance, there is no contract. Further to acceptance is consideration. And what does consideration mean? The thing of value must exchange and money. And in law, whether it's 5,000 naira that is paid as part payment, there is consideration and it's considered that there is contract. So these are the basic elements of contracts. Then when we talk of form of contract, we're talking about, is it written, is it oral, is it by conduct? Because sometimes parties can just agree orally and they will, in their own thoughts, they will think it's not a contract because they've not sat down and drafted something. No, that agreement reached orally to is contract. The law has made provisions. The court cases precedent and made provision on how you go about proving that oral contract, especially when there is offer, there has been acceptance, and there is consideration. Then that oral contract is the contract. Then you have contract by conduct. For instance, you entering a taxi without even saying a word. The taxi, you know that if you enter a taxi from this point to that point, that's also a contract, and this is the amount you pay for entering a taxi from this point to that point. That's also a contract. Then and this contract by conduct, we have capacity too. For you to enter into contract, you must have the capacity to. You cannot enter into a contract as a minor, and you as an adult cannot enter into contract with a minor, even though there is an exception to this general rule which says where the minor, what the minor is buying from you or what you are getting from the minor is something of necessity to him, or what the minor is getting from you is something of necessity to him. In such a case, that minor is bound by such contract. Then you cannot enter into contract with somebody that is mentally challenged. When the person is mentally challenged, you can't enter into a contract like a mad person. You can't enter into a contract with a mad person because except at his lucid period. Lucid periods are times that some people can be mad, but there are certain times which they will be mentally fit. So at that particular point, if you enter a contract with such a mentally challenged person, such contract can be regarded as valid. Then we have legality. That contract must be legal. That particular contract must be legal. As I said, an enforceable legal obligation. If, like for instance, a prostitute cannot approach the court and says she wants to enforce a contract she entered with a customer, because from ab initio that contract is null and void because it's an illegal act. You cannot go to a court and enforce an illegal act. Then there must be that intention between parties to create a legal obligation. In the absence of an intention to create legal obligation, parties cannot be said to have a contract. Then we'll look at privity of contract. So when we say privity of contract, let's say privity of contract simply means only parties to a contract can sue. So as you are running your business, you are selling or offering service, then you offer service to somebody who is dissatisfied with the service you offered, and he feels he's entitled to a remedy, and he goes to court and he sues you. So that's privity of contract because the contract was entered between you and him. Then, or where you enter into a contract with somebody and you breach that contract and the person decides to sue your wife or to sue your brother, there is no privity of contract between you and that between that person and your brother. The contract is between you and the person. For instance, Mr. Johnson selling his car to Mr. John, and he discovered that what Mr. Johnson has misrepresented so many facts about the car, and misrepresentation of facts can reach to invalidating a contract. In that case, Mr. John cannot go and sue Mr. Johnson's wife. Rather, he will sue Mr. Johnson because he entered into the contract with Mr. Johnson. So that's the privity of contract. However, there's an exception to this. There's an exception to this general rule. The exception is where a third party's right is being infringed upon. That party can sue the person who is trying to infringe on your right. For instance, if Mr. Johnson entered into a contract with Mr. John's wife that she will sing at a upcoming Christmas carol, so that contract he entered with Mr. John's wife, then Mr. John is trying to frustrate the wife from performing that contract. Mr. Johnson, in this case, can sue Mr. John because Mr. John is trying to interfere with the contract he entered with Mr. John's wife. So in that case, Mr. Johnson. So this is an exception to of contract. Then we have terms of contract. When we say terms of contract, we are simply saying what parties intend to be bound by. What are the terms? What are the terms of this contract? What are the things that we intend to be bound by? So these terms can be expressed, they can be implied. Expressed in the sense that at the time Mr. Johnson was selling that car to Mr. John, he will state that, okay, the car is in good condition, the tires are this, if the tire is that, I'll return the car. If the AC is not working, I'll return the car. So these are express terms and they are written down by parties that, okay, these are explicit for everybody to know. Then some express terms can carry an implied term. Let's say, okay, not all terms will be expressly written. Some could be implied. Let's say at the time Mr. Johnson was selling that Mercedes to Mr. John, there is this presumption that at the time he's selling that Mercedes should be able to move from point A to point so. Where that Mercedes is unable to move, even though it's not expressly stated in the agreement of purchasing that car, it is an implied term. So these are basically these. I'm trying to break down so that you get what express or implied term is. Then we have vitiating element in a contract. What are those things that can vitiate a contract? We have duress, where you force a party to enter into contract using threat of violence. Mr. Johnson saying to Mr. John, if you don't buy my Mercedes Benz, I'm going to burn down your house. If you don't buy my Mercedes Benz, I will ensure that your son doesn't get admission to that school. Get it? This is a threat of violence, economic violence in the sense that you will threaten somebody that if he doesn't pay you so amount, you are not going to complete that job to him. you are not going to complete that job. So you are forcing that person to enter into that contract with you. In such cases, such contracts are illegal, will be invalid, will be vitiated. Then we have undue influence. Undue influence can occur where there is a fiduciary relationship and where there is no fiduciary relationship. Fiduciary relationship is where you can, based on the position you occupy or the influence you have on that person, you can influence him to take certain decisions. So once you influence him to take certain decisions, and based on that decision, he enters into a contract, such contracts will be vitiated. Then we have where there is no special relationship and undue influence occurs. For instance, where somebody is telling someone that if you don't sign this contract, your son who has been stealing money from us will report him to the police. So it's like you are using, there is no special relationship, but you are using that influence you have over his son to make him to enter into such contracts. Such contracts too will be vitiated. Then we have misrepresentation, where you misrepresent facts at the time before or at the time of entering the contract. When you decide to misrepresent facts, like Mr. Johnson decides to misrepresent facts about the Mercedes, that the Mercedes only ran, he has used the Mercedes for 350,000 miles. The gear is in good condition. The gearbox is in good condition. The air condition is working perfectly. The Mr. John just quickly paid the money on taking, subsequently taking possession of the car. He discovered that all those facts were misrepresented by Mr. Johnson. So in that case, such contract can be vitiated. Then we have mistake. When we say mistake in the sense that the subject matter of the contract is no longer in existence. That car, maybe at the time Mr. Johnson and John are discussing about that car, unaware to them, Mr. John making payment, unaware to them that Mr. Johnson's son has had an accident with the car and the car has totally, the car caught fire and the car is totally burnt down beyond repair. So you see, that's the car is the subject matter of the contract and is non-existent. So that contract entered by Mr. John and Mr. Johnson, whereby Mr. John even makes payment to Mr. Johnson, is vitiated by virtue of mistake. And that is what we call a law. We can call that a common mistake. A mistake can be mutual in the sense that Mr. John has a Mercedes and a BMW. Then he approaches Mr. Johnson and said, Mr. Johnson, I want to sell my BM for 40,000. I want to sell my BMW for 50, my Mercedes for 50,000. Mr. Johnson thought, you want to sell the two cars for 50,000, and on that they proceed and had a contract. If later parties discover that, no, it's not what I intended. I intended to sell the Mercedes 50,000. I intended to sell the BMW for 40,000, not the two cars for 50,000. In such a case, we have what we call mutual mistake, and the contract will be vitiated by such. Then let's look at discharge of contract. What are the ways by which contracts can be discharged? One, contract can be discharged by performance, where parties have performed their obligations in the contract. The contract can be set to be discharged. Then we have frustration. Frustration, like the example of where the subject matter is no longer in existence, like the Mercedes. Mr. John and Mr. Johnson were negotiating, unknown to them that the Mercedes has been burned beyond recognition, to the point that the car cannot be repaired. In such a case, such contract entered by Mr. John and Mr. Johnson is said to be discharged by frustration. Then we have fundamental breach, where you breach the fundamental terms of contract. For instance, Mr. John is to supply Mr. Johnson is to bring a BMW from Cotonou for him, and he went and brought a Honda. So that's a breach, fundamental breach of the contract. What he wants is a BMW, not a Honda. So in that case, the contract can be said to be discharged, and Mr. John is not obligated to perform his own part of the contract, which is paying the sum of that Honda, because he ordered for a BMW, not Honda. Then contracts can be discharged mutually. Parties can mutually agree that, okay, they are parting ways. This is common in football. You hear that so coach and the management and the board of so team have decided on mutual agreement, have decided to part ways. So that contract has been discharged on mutual agreement. Then we have remedies for breach of contract. Remedies, we're saying there has been a breach of that contract, and you as a party, this brings us to the civil law I discussed at the beginning of the class. So you as a party to that contract, you're saying, no, I'm entitled to a remedy for this breach. And what are the remedies you are entitled to? One of those remedies is damages. Damages is monetary compensation for the loss you've suffered as a result of Mr. John not selling that car to you. As a result of Mr. John not selling that car to Mr. Johnson, he has incurred some damages, be it monetary, be it physical, be it psychological. It will be monetized and paid to him. Then we have specific performance. Specific performance is asking the court to order the other party to perform his own part of the obligation. You are saying that the court should make it compulsory for the other party to perform his own contract. For instance, Mr. Johnson uh, uh, brought the BMW, and he traveled to Cotonou purposely for the he traveled to Cotonou for the purpose of bringing this BMW for Mr. John. On getting to Nigeria and bringing it to Mr. John says he's no longer interested. So Mr. Johnson can approach the court and say, okay, oh, this is what happened, and I want the court to grant me specific performance, ordering Mr. John to perform his own part of the contract for by paying me the sum for the BMW. I traveled to Cotonou solely. My reason for traveling to Cotonou was to get that car for him. So the court might decide that, okay, you, Mr. John, pay him the money. But in the specific performance is an equitable remedy. An equitable remedy in the sense that is at the discretion of the court. And the courts are advised that where damages will be enough, like in this case of Mr. John, damages will be enough. So he can ask for damages as remedy. Then we have right, except in the cases of land, where we know that the law is explicit. It states that in cases of land, transaction involving land, specific performance is the only remedy, as damages cannot suffice. So that is just by the way. Then we have another remedy, which is ratification. This is just court altering the terms of the contract, which is hardly done by court. Let's say Mr. Johnson is to supply Mr. John with 50 bags of rice. I ended up supplying him 20 bags of rice. So the court might decide to say, okay, it wants to ratify the contract. Mr. John, why don't you just pay Mr. Johnson for the 20 bags he supplied you, even though the contract is for 50 bags. So you see, that's ratification by court. Then we have injunction. Injunction is simply the court stopping a party from carrying out an act. You saying, telling the court to stop Mr. A from coming to your house, to stop Mr. A from entering into your property, to stop Mr. A from. Though injunction can be mandatory, injunction can be to make somebody to do something too, depending on the circumstances of the case. That will determine which remedy you will go after for. Then we have what we call quantum merit, which is for reasonable service of remedy based on the reasonable value of service someone has offered. Let's say Mr. Johnson contracted Mr. John to build a house for him. When Mr. John got to a certain level, Mr. Johnson decided to say that Mr. John should walk up and leave. So Mr. John, by virtue of quantum merit, is entitled to the reasonable compensation, is entitled to compensation for the reasonable value of service he has offered so far. That's what we call quantum merit. Another example is when you enter a taxi, and the taxi, not fault of his, not fault of his, fault of yours, you decided that you don't want to embark on the journey anymore with the taxi, and he carried you from beggar, and you are to say it is expected you pay him for that reasonable value of service he has offered to you. Then we have what we call rescission. Rescission is when the court dismisses the contract totally. The court is saying the contract is not going on anymore. So thank you very, very much. We've come to the end of today's class. Thank you for your patience. I hope you have had, you've gained something in today's class. You have a basic knowledge of what at the beginning of this class I said I wanted participants to have. And I believe if you are doing your post-quiz, you'll be able to answer certain questions when they are raised. If you have any question, observation, contribution you want to make, now is the time to make it. Observation, contribution, questions. Now is the time to do that. I'm all ears for your question. You need any clarity, now is the time to ask your question. Thank you very much. You unmute your mic and ask your question, which I will answer. If you have any question, now is the time. Now,
good afternoon, sir.
afternoon.
Under the CAC registration of a company,
Yes.
what if it's a one-man business and it's also a startup business? How can one go about it?
With this karma that was just passed, this 2020 karma, you as a person, as an individual, you can register a company as one director, one shareholder. But as I said earlier, CAC are yet to implement the new karma, so they are still applying the old karma. So you have a business, you want to register. So what you do, and is your business, and you want to register it as a company, what you will do now, before CAC begins implementation of the new policy, what you will do now is you get another person, because it's at least 2 directors, at least 2 shareholders. You get another person, and the share capital of your company is 1 million. You get another person, you make the person a shareholder, but you make yourself the majority shareholder. Let's say you can allot 999,000 shareholders to yourself, then you allot 1 shares to that person you are making a shareholder. Get it?
So it's compulsory for you to get one person.
At least 2. You must get at least 1 person. So you can just allot 1 share to that person, and you must get another director, and you can also make that person a director. For now, until CAC begins the implementation of the new karma, then you can approach CAC and register as a single director and single CAC as a single shareholder. So once they begin the implementation of the new policy, you can do change of shareholders, removal of shareholders, transfer of shares, where that 1 share you allocated to that person, you transfer it to yourself. You can also remove that person as director. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. Any more questions?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
This is Mercy.
Yes.
Okay. For those into poultry farmers, like maybe broiler rearing, is it not
Hello?
that? Which
I
company
can.
are we?
First of all, okay, if you want to, you are into poultry, you want to go into, you are into poultry, it's not compulsory you register a company, but it's advisable you do register a company. Let's say you have a poultry farm, not company, you can even register a business name with the CAC. You have a poultry farm, let's say Mercy and Farms. Hello?
I've registered with CAC. I have a registered company with CAC already.
Okay, what's the name of the company?
Sage Agro Enterprise.
Okay, let's say Sage Agro Enterprise is registered with CAC, and you want to distribute your chickens. You want to slaughter them. You want to package them.
Okay.
I'm just asking you, do you want to package them? Like you
No,
package?
no, it's just to just to sell out when there is festive period or when people can come
So
and just get it.
if it is a live one, I don't think you need to register
Okay.
with either NAFDAC or anything. But where you want to package, you want to package it, freeze it, and the rest, you will need NAFDAC registration number for them to see how you go about the procedure of doing that, whether it's in line with safety guidelines. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So in the absence of any question, we've come to the end of today's lesson. Uh, but there will be pre-quiz, and I will hand you over to the course coordinator for his closing remarks. So uh, I'm going to hand you over to the course coordinator for the closing remark. So after the closing remark, there will be post quiz, and you've come to the end of today's. After the closing remark, you take your post quiz. Then there is no any other module. So you've come to the end of today's class. So I'll quickly hand you over to our coordinator for the closing remarks. And from me here, from my end is goodbye. Thank you very much for your patience and listening to my lecture. Thank you very much. So just exercise a little bit of patience. The course coordinator will soon be online and will address you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, let me once more welcome you to the Nigerian Limited-EDI training batch 19. We've come to the end of our program for the week. What we have now is some little housekeeping as we prepare for our graduation. It's our tradition on Saturdays, every Saturdays at the end of the training, to carry out some graduation ceremony. It's not a physical graduation, it's an online graduation program that we do. What we'll do is we'll send some speeches, and then at the end of it all, we'll also distribute the certificates. Your certificates will be issued by tomorrow. The graduation ceremony starts by 12, and then by 1, we'll finalize. And then thereafter, we'll forward your certificates to your individual WhatsApp accounts. The platform also leave the platform open for tomorrow up till Monday, next week Monday, that's the 23rd. And we give participants the opportunity if they have any things, products or inventions or items they want to display, to exhibit those products on the platform. That provides for them an opportunity of interaction with their colleagues on this program, so that they'll help themselves in marketing their products and then their inventions or whatever it is that they have to promote. So if you're already in one form of business enterprise or the other, you're into fashion design, and you have some of your products to display, the platform will be available. If you're into farming, poultry farming, and you want to advertise the poultry farm, the platform there for you to also advertise such products. And it's open to all participants and all of their products that they want to advertise. Okay. Again, the platform will be open for as long as we are still in the process of developing your business plans and uploading them, so that if there are any questions, there are any issues you want to raise with us at any point in time, at any given point in time, the platform will be available for you to be able to raise those issues with us, and then we'll be able to respond. It provides for us a platform for communication until such a time that when you are done, when you eventually get the loan, then of course we can now be able to begin the process of shutting down that platform. So that's what we do basically. Having said that, let me thank you immensely for being a part of institution for this 1 week. We hope you were able to benefit from it. We hope it was fruitful. We hope we were able to provide you with new insights into the management of your business. And we'll keep you in our prayers that what you aspire to get with respect to the loan, you'll be able to acquire it. And then, of course, start your business or expand your existing business. That's our prayer unto you. I notice there are some questions on the chat box. Let me have a look. If it's something that I have to respond to or Mr. Folomi will attend to, we'll see about that. I have some questions. Okay, Amarachi says she has some questions. Drop your questions on your WhatsApp platform. Okay, if it's something that Mr. Barrister Johanna will attend to, please, you can ask the question. It's still available. Amarachi?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
It's concerning the loan, but I think I'll drop it on the WhatsApp platform.
Okay, no problem. So do that. All right. Any other question for our barrister? He's still in the class. All right. If there's no any other question, then we'll shut down for today, and then I'll let you go. You're all busy people, so that you continue with your other business of the day. So have a wonderful day ahead of you. So we'll continue to engage with you on the platform. Thank you very much for being a part of our week. Well, wish you all the very best. Bye-bye now. Thank you.